Hello, everybody. This is your man, Jason F. Smith, creator of the Shades of Intimacy and Modern Day Warrior, found at jasonfsmith.com, and I'm here with my lovely wife,
Jennie Stanchfield.
So we're welcoming you to the Shades of Intimacy podcast. This is different than the daily download edition. Do you know what's different about it?
What is different?
This one's a lot longer, and it has both of us talking about the topic.
Oh man, I thought this was 5 minutes.
Okay, it's not going to be 5 minutes. This is where we're going to spend some time to sit and discuss.
I'm gonna have to go get a snack.
You're going to have to get a snack in the middle of it?
Yeah.
Well, no one will know.
I was not planning.
You can get up and sneak out quietly while I'm talking.
Get a snack.
And I'll be like, "So Jenny, what do you think about that?" And then you can just swoop back in right in time to
Potato chips.
to answer. Yeah, everyone wants to hear you chewing on potato chips, right? Okay.
Be forewarned.
Be forewarned. Okay, so what is the topic of our discussion today?
The topic of today's discussion is those moments of little deaths in our life.
Little deaths in our lives.
Oh.
So I know you have a story to tell us, and it's a sad story actually, but before we tell that, let's talk about what we have coming up. We have our spring or 2018 season of workshops is starting. The first event we have going is February 16th, 17th, and 18th, and it is a couples workshop.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We call that the Shades of Intimacy. We are taking applications. We have seats available. We're getting filled up, but there are still seats available. And so if you're interested in that, you need to reach out to us, have a conversation, and we'll see where you land. And we'll go from there. So reach out to us. Now Jenny is going to start and tell us a sad story.
Okay. So I apologize first of all for coughing and sputtering. I think both Jason and I have a cold. But anyway, so this morning, just like every weekday morning, I drive about an hour from our house up in the mountains down to the Salt Lake City Valley. And so obviously it's not unusual because we live in the mountains to see wildlife and to see lots of wildlife, both living and deceased on the side of the road, unfortunately. So, that part is not pleasant, but not unusual. So this morning, as I was driving to work and heading down basically a main street in our town, I noticed that in the middle turning lane was a deer that was still alive, but had clearly been hit and injured. And she was lying down, head up, but all fours tucked under her and lying down and head up, blood coming from her mouth. So it was very clear she was not okay. And that's something that, I've been making this drive for 10 years now?
Close to 10
years. It's rare that I've seen that. I think it's happened to me 3 times. This being the 3rd. 3 times when I've actually seen an animal that 4 times. Has actually been hit, but is is still alive. And it's never easy. It's really awful. And there was a woman on the side of the road, and she was on her phone, and I could see a police car coming the other direction. And so I knew that they were coming to help the animal. And as I drove past, I was just hit with a wall of emotion and just so sad for this animal and this beautiful, vibrant, life force animal that was lying in the middle of the road, basically on its last breath. How often in our lives do we encounter life in its last moments? And first, it's happened, right? We've been there as people have passed from our lives and animals have passed from our lives. Mm-hmm. But, what struck me is the cars that we're zooming past, and the joggers and the bikers, and life was carrying on, business as usual, as this majestic creature was dying, was in its very last moments. And even now, like, that makes me want to tear up. It really does. It was just driving past it. It was this moment of its death, and life just carried on around it. And what struck me was how much in our lives we don't take that moment to, so many times we let things go in our lives and we say goodbye to things, whether it be people or parts of ourselves even, or relationships, or whatever it may be, a job. This is the little deaths, little pieces of ourselves, whether it's an actual being or little pieces of ourselves, and how we just zoom on with life. Business as usual. And how in those moments, it's really a moment to almost, we don't have funerals. We don't have a rite of passage for all these times when we've gone through a death, an ego death, a death of a job, a death of whatever. And that just struck me so much today as life just zoomed around this beautiful deer as she was dying.
That brings up a memory I had as a kid. I was driving down Provo Canyon, and so when I'm saying a kid, I'm in my 20s, and this deer pops out, and I'm jamming on the brakes, and I'm swerving, and I miss it, and then boom, a second pops out, and I'm still avoiding, and I miss that, and I'm like, I have I've made it, and then a third came out, and I didn't miss it. And I hit it, and it kind of bounced up into the air, and it was moving so quickly across the road that it kind of, the strike propelled it continually across the road, so it landed in the snow. And I pulled over, thinking, like this animal's dead or something, and it just got up, and it bounded away, bound over the trees, and I was like, full of relief that it lived. And then, I don't know who I was talking to. I think it was my mother. So I told her the story. And she was like, oh, Jason, that deer didn't live. Mm-hmm. It went out and died.
Right.
And that was a super sad moment for me, because I'd gone through this process of a very short period of 1, 2, 3, and then I hit it, and then I have this, oh my gosh, I've done this, and then it lived, and so I get this relief, and then my mom comes later, and says, oh, by the way, that animal didn't live. It might have been my dad who said that, or something like, yeah, and so I was struck by the sadness of that, that in that moment of, I think it was a she deer, scrambled off and went nuts, right? But there's a different emotional texture to the whole thing of just sitting there.
Right.
Which reminds me of the animals that we've had to take recently. We've had to put down a cat, Tux, and we had to Godiva. And then we had this Chihuahua who we gathered the entire family together to go say goodbye to. And he was a real shit. Like, you got to know this dog. A wonderful shit. Just a total jackass of a dog. All of his 16 years. And so, just to mess with us, we got to the vet and they told us, oh, he died. So he went out
on his own terms.
He went out on his own terms. And all of this is to speak to the passing, the passing, right. which to me, I'm bringing up something that there's an author who we like, who's written some books. His name is Jed McKenna, and he's, in his non-emotional way, has said, I've made a deal with the universe. He's made a deal with the universe that before he dies, that he at least has a couple seconds in his world, but a minute, to sit in solitude and give thanks for his amazing life.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's his deal. That's what he wants that's the bargain, and he is sure that he will get that. I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll die in his sleep or get hit by a bus, and but that's a thing. And when you told me that story of the deer, I thought about that. Like, this deer was up with its head up, and it's like, no illusions. No illusions. And so I don't know, there's some dignity in that.
Yeah. No, and there was. I mean, as I watched the deer, she's literally in the middle of the road. Cars driving east, cars driving west on both sides of her. And she was just laying there, legs tucked under her. Just, from my perspective, I'm sure she was terrified. But the sense was just this calmness, this
Mm-hmm.
this moment of passing, that she wasn't scrambling. She couldn't see the whites of her eyes. She wasn't trying to get up.
Yeah.
It was just this moment of
I think it's surrender.
surrender.
Yeah. Yeah. I was feeling that moment, and it applies so well to our lives. When we're so active and we're so much bending the world to our will,
Mm-hmm.
and making things happen, and yet, so that's the contrast to me as as men and women of industry, and those people who are coming to us on relationship or life are like, I gotta change this. Like, I'm gonna actively make things different. And that's good. They've made a decision. They've committed. This has to change. They put the work in, the desire, the faith, the trust. They've invested the time, the money. This is serious. And yet the flip of that is that in the end, no matter how much we decide this is going to change, there's certain parts of the game, and namely the end game, that, what do you do? There's that, what's that poem? Is it by Browning? This is a good one. Do you remember that poem? It's from,
Rage Against the Night?
yeah, boy.
It's not Browning.
It's not Browning? Okay,
No.
well.
It's Dylan.
Oh, it is Dylan.
Dylan.
I'm searching on our computer while we're doing this podcast, and I get Rage
the
Against
Dying of the Night.
Rage Against the Dying. Because I remember it's coming up with Rage Against the Machine.
Dylan Thomas, yeah.
Yeah. Do not go gentle into that good night. And so, hey, you didn't know this, but you're going to get a poetry reading. So do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. And that rage, rage against the dying of the light. I get that. Like, it's a rage, rage against the bullshit in your life. Rage, rage against a relationship that isn't working. Mm-hmm. Rage, rage. You may have a relationship. I have a story I heard from about a dear friend today. I miss talking with him, but he has, made a mess of his life, but destroyed relationships with his children, with his ex-wife, with his father, and raged against that, and literally through dedicated practice and years of time, and has repaired each one of those. Mm-hmm. And the last was his father. And right after that happened, his father then passed. So there was this conclusion, this completion to that, right?
Yeah.
But that's all flipped by this, well, when death comes, I don't want to be, this is important to me because I've had so many moments in my life, particularly with relationship, when letting go and standing there, blood dropping down my face, legs curled up in the middle of the road going, it's over. But doing that there is something special about doing it with grace.
Well, and
Why?
back to the example of the man you just described, where you said he raged against, the construct he'd created in all these relationships that was incredibly distorted and unhealthy and all the rest of it. Even with that, there was a massive surrender. Otherwise, none of that could have been repaired.
Yeah.
So, going back to the poem, so many times we think of this rage against means I'm going to grab the wheel and I'm going to take control of this in a bigger and more fiery way than I am right now. And that's not what it is. To rage is not to take control of the wheel. To rage is to admit the fucked upness of it all.
Yeah.
And the pain and the sorrow, and it's not to grab the wheel, it's to burn it down.
Yeah, we had a client who came to one of our recent workshops. I won't use his name, obviously, but he was in the midst of a divorce. And the reason he came to this workshop was to fix that.
Right.
I am here to fix this.
Right.
And one of the things that we said to them both was that you have to open to the possibility that this isn't fixable. So what you do in terms vis-a-vis your partner that you're trying to get back has to come from a position of surrender. This can go, and that my love that I am offering may get rejected. He didn't want to hear that.
He didn't want to hear that, and what would have felt better to everyone who was witnessing what he was going through would have been to feel his rage.
Mm-hmm.
Because what was happening was he was grabbing the wheel. It's like if that deer dying in the middle of the road was trying to, grab the wheel, and it's like, no, the deer was just like, no, this is done. Like, this is over.
But it was grabbing the wheel of his life was part of it, but he was trying to grab the wheel of her life.
Of their relationship, yeah. Right.
There was a degree to which he was saying, okay, I've not been the perfect husband. I can do better. So I will make those changes. And I applaud that, because I've been there. But there was something off in that, which was about the control aspect. Like he was trying to wrench it back to the way it was.
Yeah, he's trying to change the course of what had already happened.
Yeah. And what we were saying was, okay, allow this to die. Because whatever you had was not working. So instead of going back and trying to make it like it was 20 years ago or whenever they had first come, let that die and then offer new love and see what happens. And I think that was we got a lot of resistance in this. And we're not picking on anyone because everyone's as resistant like this as can be.
Right. Well, and I mean, that's incredibly common in long-term relationships that are coming to an end.
Yeah.
I mean, of course
But I mean, we're saying something very potent here. I mean, regardless, like if you're here to spice up your relationship, let's get spicy, or to save it, whatever you had that wasn't working still has to die.
Right.
That's that surrender. You can't rage and make it back the way it was. You have to let go of that. And let that, the title of this podcast was Little Deaths, and those are the little deaths. And sometimes they're big. Sometimes they're big deaths.
Right.
Like sometimes it's someone passes. My first wife passed. That was a big death. You know, some relationships do not work. You know, and I mean to put this into context, our client has done very well, has moved on. He did not save that relationship. He has let go. And so we're talking about him in a moment when he was in a clinging state, raging, going, I'm going to make this work. And that didn't work for him. And what the other thing that I just want to throw in here, not to put too fine a point on it, but the thing he wasn't doing was raging about how hurt he was.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was not feeling his pain.
Right.
Which was stumping him down.
Right.
Just stumping. I mean, that's a new word there.
Stumping?
Stuffing him down.
Right. And, you know, and going back to the concept of little deaths, too, is, you know, what we don't do is we don't take that moment to pause and say, yeah, there it goes. We don't take that moment. We stick on our blinders and we just plow through. And then 10 years later, we realize we're not the same fucking person anymore and we're still with this partner who's a totally different person and all the rest, instead of being on top of it and realizing moment by moment, I'm no longer this person. And looking around and going, okay, this is a little death right now. What else needs to change? Because we cannot assume that in any moment that when we're going through some sort of ego death, that a part of us, we're letting go of ourselves, that does not have a ripple effect out in our life.
Yeah.
But what we do is we just drag along our life with us like we're in a car and assume that everything's going to keep up, and, you know, and then again, a decade later, we're looking behind us going, where the hell is everybody? I have a wife who hates me. I have children who don't even know who the hell I am. It's...
Yeah, so this, I'm gonna bring something together here that I think you'll find amusing and actually insightful. Amusing first, and then you'll get the insightful for it. So a little context to this conversation that's about to happen is that Jennie and I have decided, or had decided, and we've completed it, to watch the HBO TV show Westworld for the second time. So we ran through all 10 episodes again. We got a little sick this weekend, and so we binged. We watched through them. Now I'm going to make this connect. One of the themes of that show, and there's many themes if you haven't seen it, and no spoilers here, okay? But one of the themes is that robots and humans have a cornerstone event or story in their life. Right. Like a cornerstone story, such as like one character, I don't want to ruin any of the story. But everyone has a cornerstone story, which is this piece that people aren't allowing to die.
That's their identity.
That they identify with stuff. And so I had a interesting experience, and I shared this with you, Jennie. Now I'm going to share it with you guys, and we'll talk about it. So in this whole context of watching it again, and some experiences I've had as we together and individually continue to grow, I have realized that I had my own cornerstone story, which was that my first wife died, and that I raised my kids alone for a while. And I didn't realize how. So that's fact. She died. But what I didn't realize is that I had attached to that as a story, and it became an identity.
Right.
And I remember I was teaching a group of men on video down in California for Wake Up Warrior, and I got up and I was given a minute, and I had this deep insight. Like, I'm getting up, I'm on stage with the cameras on me, and Garrett J. White goes, "You, Jason, up, 1 minute." And I, like, what the hell am I going to say? And I realized that my story, in this moment, I just have this flash, that my story was, I was a survivor. I was a survivor. because this bad thing had happened to me. My wife died and I had to raise kids myself. But I didn't realize how much I had put on that there were layers of connections to it. So instead of it just being a little death, letting it go, I had dug in on this story of being a survivor. And I remember going, I don't want to survive anymore. I want to fucking thrive. And I remember seeing Garrett, who was standing behind the cameras, pump his fist. And I could tell, like, energetically, I had hit something, a different story. And in that moment is how much more emotional can you get here? I'm going to get a little emotional. Is this deer's in this road and is gracefully just sitting there. And all of it's done. Mm-hmm. This isn't, I'm losing a relationship. This isn't, I'm losing a job. This is, I'm losing it all.
Yep. Everything.
Everything. And so in that moment, this deer, she offers the lesson on how to live life. Mm-hmm. And so, is her story going to be, I'm that deer who got hit by the car. I'm that deer. Or is she going, oh, my life was great, but it's over. And here it goes. What's next? Who knows what's next? But instead of getting sucked onto that damn thing.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we all, everything in our life starts with a seed, and from that seed grows a city. And that city can be as big as we want to make it, right? Which is, my wife died. I was in a bad relationship. My brother died. I'm from a family that didn't value women. Whatever that, that's the city we build on top of the seed.
Yeah.
And as I sat there and watched that deer in the middle of the road, there was no fucking city.
Yeah.
That was a moment of a life facing its end.
Yeah.
And there was incredible peace and dignity in it. No scramble. And it was incredibly sad and incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, and I've had that experience personally, like in relationship. You and I had that a couple times. So, I mean, we're teaching this, but we're not perfect in any way, shape, or form. But at least twice, I remember going, well, this could end. Mm-hmm. And there was, in me, the energy, one was the impulse was to grab. Right. Was to really grab onto you. And this was years ago. I'll give you context to the story. It was that we would just first started dating. I'm a single father of 3. She comes in, no kids. And it was a lot, And I'm like, and so at one point in time, she said, I need a break. I need to go. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I belong here. The great quote was, I might be a square peg in a round hole. And so I took that moment to feel into the deepest truth that I could. Like, I faced it. I looked at it straight in the face. And I said, is she right? Is this just not supposed to work? And my deepest truth was no. She was wrong. She was running. I felt that. And I thought, well, what do I do? Grab her, hold on to her, force her to stay? Or do I just say, hey, I love you, I get it, and give her the space to go? And I don't know how I did it, but I was very clear on those two choices. And in my heart, I felt that we could work. I just felt that in a very calm way, not a grasping way. And so in that face of that, and you remember that when this happened, right? I did not grasp at you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think of those moments of when you can feel something in your life has to go. And when I say that, I don't mean like it has to go permanently, but something has to change, right? Yeah. Our relationship had to change. Mm-hmm. We had to shed something and get to either a different place or not be together. Mm-hmm. And it was those moments when you're at that crossroads of let it die, and not die as in we don't have a relationship, but let whatever's in the way, whatever we're scrambling for, whatever we're grasping onto so tightly, let it die.
Mm-hmm.
Surrender. Or keep fucking scrambling to an end that you don't know where it's going. I mean, you know, like you described, you could have grabbed onto this. We could have just kept scrambling along and delayed the inevitable, which was something had to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is. I can't, it's hard to describe those moments of graceful surrender. Those moments of graceful surrender where your entire nervous system, as sad as it can be, as much as sorrow and grief may come up in your body, your nervous system relaxes.
Yes, it is. It is absolutely a relax. You have a side of you that is panicking, that is trying to grasp.
Right.
But you literally feel inside yourself the choice. Like, I can grasp. I describe it this way. I can make this bad if I want. I can make it bad. I could make it a thing. I could go into drama mode. I could make it a crisis. I could just go off the wall. I could paint the colors black. The wall's black, right?
Build a city on top of it.
Right? Or I could just let it go. And I feel those urges, like the urges to drama this bitch up. Mm-hmm. Like that's a weird way of saying it, but I can feel it. Like there's a part of me that is I'll be just core honest, that could just drama shit up. Right. And does. And then there's times when that's the surrender part. That's the grace where you go, okay, I'm not going to drama this up. And it's not what I want, but I'm going to let it be perfect. That's that moment. I think that speaks to the people who come to the Shades of Intimacy. So we created this workshop. We call it the Shades of Intimacy. And it's because intimacy connection has so many different colors.
Right.
People just want it to be black and white.
Right.
They want it to be man, woman, and they actually don't even want that. What they want is gray, right? They just want, one color, or white. We're just both pure whiteness, and without the different textures, the colors, the tones, the different sounds and smells and energies. If you don't leverage those differences, you're gonna have a problem with long term. You're gonna get into a sedation mode. We've seen this. We've done it. But back to the topic, letting that go gracefully. Stepping into the. I don't know. It's the opposite of rage. Rage against the dying of the light. It's walk gracefully into the dying of the light.
Yeah, but I still go back to that poem of rage, and rage to me. Rage encompasses the sorrow, the emotion, the energy around letting something go. It's not.
I think you're literally redefining the word for your own purposes.
No, to me, rage is not grabbing the wheel and trying to take control again.
I really think this poem is about grabbing onto the wheel and saying, "Fuck you, death. I'm not going to go down easily. I'm going to fight for every last second. I will go to my grave with with my fingers flipped in the air." I think that's what it's about. I could be wrong.
I don't think Dylan Thomas is talking about raging to keep an egoic life that's a construct of someone's perception and illusion. I don't think that's what Dylan Thomas is talking about. I think he's talking about you come to, again, the crossroads, the nut, the core, the moment of death. And in that moment, seeing in that moment what means the most to you, your family, your loved ones, your home, and raging against the dying of the light in that moment. The light, not the ego, the light.
Okay, so maybe I got you. Rage against the bullshit. Right? The layers of bullshit. Like, people come to us, okay, like, they come in, and if they're not pissed off about the shitty nature of their life, their bodies, their business, their connection to God, their relationship, if they don't have some fire. Right? If they don't have some fire that this shit's not working, it's like, yeah, it's not working, I don't care.
Yeah, most of those people have a sense that there is something underneath that all that is so valuable. That is so...
But they're sedated
but that's the
motherfuckers.
rage. The rage
But they're not raged.
But that's where you need to get. Mm-hmm. The rage against the dying of the light, to me, is that moment when you realize how fucking precious what we have is, and your lights are going out, and in that moment you say, no! Like, I just fucking got it. I just got how precious this is. I'm gonna fucking rage against the dying of the light. It's like those people that you know, you've heard about this, like the men and the women that have just worked their asses off their entire life and not spent a moment with their family or their children. They don't even know who their children are. Their children hate them.
What's the line Stephen Covey says? No one on their deathbed, and I don't know who the hell he's quoting, but no one on their deathbed ever wishes they'd spent more time in the office.
So you have the image, right? At that moment, on that person's deathbed, you know, the family comes in, and in that moment, the person fucking gets it. Their children are the light. The love they had for their wife when they first met her, or her, you know, was their light. The beauty of life is the light.
Yeah.
In that moment, you rage against the dying of light. You've lost it. And that's what people need to find when they come to our workshops. And they don't, right? Because a lot of people are incredibly sedated. They're incredibly numb, but that's...
We had a teacher once tell us, she said, you need to attract the people who are ready. And I think that's, you know, the more and more we surrender to that. So this is the bullshit line, this is my bullshit, is that I'll see people who are in pain, and I'll say, you know, your light is dying. You're living in darkness, and you're not raged about it. Mm-hmm. They're not enraged. They're not fighting against it. And I want them to get enraged, right?
Get some fire.
And I'm surrendering more and more as we up this game. Because if you're not enraged, then you're not enraged. Like, if it's okay. It's stunning. Like, it's stunning. What's that famous story about the frog boiling in the pot? You know, like, if you throw a frog in a pot of boiling water, it jumps right out. It's burnt. But if you just burn it slowly, you know, it'll stay in the hot water way longer than it should have. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, we should be very clear. Very clear. Like, the line is drawn. When you're ready to jump out of the pot, come see us. Well, if you want to sit and baste in your bullshit, then I can't help you.
This is true.
That's my surrender. That's my surrender.
I agree. There has to be some level of discontentment. Mm-hmm. There has to be some level of irritation. You know, it's like getting something stuck in your eye. You don't go fishing your fingers around in your eyeball unless there's some form of irritation.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, that's true of people coming to the workshop. What I want to say, though, and I think Garrett said this from Wake Up Warrior, is, you know, there's also a piece where, yeah, you have to have enough of an irritation that you come out of your hidey hole, wherever you may be. And then it's totally legitimate to come to something like our workshop and borrow fire. You borrow fire. You have to.
Yeah.
Because if you had your own fire, you would have done something about this yourself. So you borrow fire.
Yeah.
And then you keep using it until your own fire ignites. Eventually your own fire has to ignite, or you're just going back to your hidey hole.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's why workshops like ours are so important, because you come to them and you borrow fire.
Yeah. Which So I'm going to bring up I'm talking with someone, I'm going to keep it anonymous right now, who is saying to me that they're stuck. This is an emotional moment for them. They're stuck in their life, but things are good. They're good. They're not bad. And so I can see that this person is...
Shades of good.
Yeah, shades of good. And I don't think until... Yeah, it's a very difficult situation. Like it's either... Well, okay, look, there could be bullshit. I think... I just had an insight as I'm saying this, so I want to be delicate here, okay? I think there was a lie in the space.
For sure.
It's bullshit. I don't think things are quite as good as she thinks they are.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part. That's the part. You got to be ready to get your fucking illusions smashed, or you're not going anywhere. Which is why so many people. Yeah, it's that dense. That's the point. That's the surrender. That's the grace. Is when you go, I'm fucked up, and I need someone to shatter my illusions.
Right.
That's a surrender. That's a death right there. I have to die to this person who is so full of shit.
Well, and to what you described too. I mean, the ego, the brain, the illusion, whatever you want to call us, it's exactly like our bodies. So if you imagine our bodies and you go into a yoga pose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the longer you hold that yoga pose and practice that yoga pose, the deeper you can go into that yoga pose, the more flexible you become, the more good it is, the more you can hold it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just like our relationships, the longer you stew in shit and hold a certain pose in your relationship that is uncomfortable, well, the deeper you can go in it because you've become accustomed to it. So, of course, it's good. That's why it's shades of good.
But we're so trained. I remembered So I played this game. I was deeply playing this game. I really played a mind game on myself. So in my first marriage, it was tough, really tough. It was really tough. And I remember I came up with a game to let me win. And I said, I'm willing to be happy. And then when that didn't work, I said, I'm willing to be willing to be happy. And then, I mean, you want to talk slight mental illness. I remember getting 5 or 6 deep. I'm willing to be willing to be willing to be willing to be, there, and I feel it. There's the level of just layers of bullshit, right? And I thought I was heroic because I was willing to be happy no matter what. But that no matter what turned into a toleration of something that was absolutely no good. This is interesting. One of our dear friends, Melanie Lake, posted something on Facebook. Actually, she didn't. It was Krista. And she made a comment on it. So I watched it. It was a lady about addiction. Mm-hmm. And she said, so if you have an addict in your life and they like you, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
If they're happy with you, you're enabling them. And this lady came from the addiction point of view, and she said, no, if you're putting a roof over their head, if you're feeding that, no. And she said, this sounds really mean. And I thought, wow, that's pretty funny. That was me. I was willing to be 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 happy no matter what. No, I mean, it didn't matter. It just didn't matter. I could be happy no matter how shitty it was. And all that translated to was I just got a lot of shit that I got to be happy with.
Right.
Like it didn't help.
No.
I thought I was literally being a hero. Mm-hmm. This is years ago. And so I finally said, oh, no. I'm not willing to do this. I'm not willing to put up with this shit anymore. And a lot of that was put up with my own shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's stunning to think of everything begins almost like with a core intent. Like, I want love. I want to give love. I want to receive love. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And then it's the knots and the shit that we create from that point on that becomes such a convoluted distortion of bullshit.
Yeah.
And if you cut it back to what it was in the beginning, I want to give love, I want to be love, I want to receive love. That's fucking amazing. That's a death. Right there, that's a death.
That's a death, cutting away all the other shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, we're reaching the end of our podcast, but I want to bow tie this with something. I want to ask the real question. We've been talking about very hard things today. Very difficult. So, from someone who's been there, I want to ask you, Jennie, if someone's out there listening and they're on this verge that the shit is piling up, they put up with it for too long, and they want to take that step that's going to cause, let's just not bullshit anybody here, it's going to cause a death of something. And they're terrified. They're terrified. They're terrified to fill out the application. They're terrified to text and say, I want a conversation with you. They're terrified to come to the workshop. They're terrified to sign up for one-on-one coaching because they know it's going to lead to this death. What do you have to say to them in that moment when they're that scared?
Well, I go back to the deer in the middle of the road. There was no distraction there. She wasn't trying to distract herself from the reality of it. It was a moment of pause, despite the world going on around her. And in that moment, facing what truth is. We use our lives to completely distract ourselves. And we can go on doing that forever. So if there is someone out there, and I'm sure there's lots of people out there, they're getting to that crossroads of something needs to die. And what I recommend is that you stop there. You stop distracting yourself. You turn off the TV. You maybe cancel your plans with your friends. You don't open that 6-pack of beer. Don't, just pause.
I heard someone once say, stop taking reading material into the bathroom.
There you go. Stop reading on the shitter.
Yeah, face your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Pause and just be with that feeling for a minute, because in that moment, your body, your reality is going to tell you what you want. And you're at that crossroads because it's been screaming at you that it wants something different. But we are incredibly adept and skillful at remaining distracted. But when you come face to face with it, like that deer this morning, there is no distraction. So stop distracting yourself. And if in a moment you say, I need to have a conversation, take action.
Yeah.
And then in the next moment you can freak out and worry about what you just did, otherwise like email us or whatever.
Yeah.
But get quiet and in a moment, listen to the voice.
Yeah.
And do what it says. And then freak out after that. That's fine.
I want to add one final story from my perspective about you. There was an experience where you heard the voice and it said to sign up for a workshop in California with women by yourself. It was just her. And she just raced, she registered, she did it before she could stop. And then literally went kicking and screaming the entire way. Called me, managed to get in her rental car.
Oh, that was the funny part, yeah.
got in the rental car, and the GPS literally, like psychic power, resonated to her and took her the wrong way.
It was a meta game.
Yeah, it was a meta game.
It took me through up into the mountains on dirt roads. I'm in LA. I'm in LA. And I'm trying to get to Ojai. And the GPS literally takes me up a canyon and on a dirt road over a mountain. What?
I know. and she's on the phone with me until she got out of cell coverage. Then the phone dropped.
And I'm really freaking
it's
out.
just her, the car, the dirt roads, and I'm on the phone, and I'm like in Utah, and I'm like, do you want me to fly down there? I mean, what do you want me to do? Like, you are going literally off the map.
Off the map.
You're just going off the map. So if you are panicked, if you are screaming and yelling and calling in literal tears to your husband back in Utah, I would say you're probably heading in the right direction.
Something good is happening.
Something good was happening, and that was the start of it for you, wasn't it?
It was. Yep.
It really was. Okay, so I think this was a powerful podcast. I was really honored to share this time with you, Jennie, and that you shared that story and your emotions about that deer, because I could really feel your heart in it, and I just want to say I praise you for that. Thank you for sharing that with us and for our listeners.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up. This is Jason F. Smith
And Jennie Stanchfield.
signing off.